They're listening.
When the world sleeps, the whispers begin.
The first transmission ended in silence, but silence never stays still. 2 weeks after the Whisper Path investigation, another signal surfaced. 19.1 hertz, unstable, repeating a single phrase, "Play it back." The source wasn't the forest. It came from inside the archive. We thought the system had gone dormant. We were wrong. They said the archive was empty. No audio left, no trace, no voice. But every silence has residue. What you're about to hear is what remains of the Cold Run recordings, a collection of corrupted tapes. Recovered from a basement vault belonging to audio archivist Mara Densmore, missing since 2019, the files were stored on obsolete media, reel-to-reel, VHS, cassette, even wax, half melted, half erased, yet still, something played back. Each fragment contains frequencies, outside normal range, sounds that shouldn't exist. The team at Densmore's lab cataloged them under a single title, handwritten in red ink across every sleeve: Whisper Path. This reconstruction is not chronological. Some sections overlap. Some answer each other. You will hear distortions. Leave them. You may notice pauses. Where the machine seems to breathe, let them play. These are part of the signal. The following is a complete transmission of all 8 recovered chapters, and the 2 fragments found afterward. Together, they form the only surviving record of what happened at Cold Run. Begin playback. The signal threaded itself through the old servers, whispering between magnetic coils, rewriting file names, tagging every directory as "listen." Each night the hum grew louder, forming words in binary, not messages. One file opened by itself. A spectrogram appeared, shaped like a human pulse. They said the tape was silent, no background hum, no static, no signal at all. But when I pressed play, the machine breathed. A faint hiss came through, rising and falling like air, drawn through teeth. Then, between the noise, a voice surfaced, thin, distant, female. "Do you hear it too?" I froze. The date on the case file read 1987. The voice sounded like it was speaking from behind the magnetic strip itself, not recorded on it. I checked the waveform. Empty, no peaks, no frequency, and yet the sound was there. That was my first whisper. It shouldn't have existed, but it did. And once you hear something that shouldn't exist, it never leaves. For days afterward, I caught the same breathy rhythm. In other things, the hum of the fridge, the whisper of traffic, even my own breathing. It was as though the sound had followed me home, waiting to be replayed. When I listened again, the whisper had changed.
"Don't rewind me."
I didn't listen. I rewound it anyway. And that's when I first heard my own breath, on the recording, timed exactly between hers. On the monitor, a waveform flickered like lungs expanding. I asked it to identify itself. The reply came as modulation, my own voice delayed by exactly 6 seconds. "You kept recording," it said, "so we kept speaking." The screen exhaled fog. Condensation formed on the glass, spelling one word: stay. The hollow bend house stood at the edge of a marsh, where fog rolled in thick enough to hide entire rooms. No one had lived there since the Coopers vanished. Their last message to police had been an unfinished voicemail, a long silence, then a whispering breath.
"Hi,
When I entered, the wallpaper was damp, the mirrors fogged from within. My recorder picked up a faint background tone, steady, almost like a heartbeat. Room by room, the tone shifted pitch, following me. In the nursery, the sound sharpened. A mobile above the crib turned slowly on its own, spinning in rhythm. To that heartbeat hum, I raised my mic. If anyone can hear me, please respond. The whisper came instantly.
You already moved in.
I looked down. My boots had sunk into the carpet. It was soft and wet beneath my feet, as if the floor was breathing. The hum grew louder, resonating through the walls. I left the recorder running and stepped outside. When I listened later, the whisper had followed me out, repeating the same phrase until the battery died.
You already moved in.
We traced the frequency to the sub-basement, a small control room sealed since 1998. Inside, reel-to-reel decks turning with no tape, oscilloscopes drawing perfect circles, each device powered by nothing we could find. I leaned in close to one of the speakers. A voice whispered through the static.
You already heard this.
Then the reel reversed. Every past recording, every whisper, every breath began playing backward. Every building has an echo, but some echoes don't wait for a sound to start. The university called me in after students complained about a lecture hall that recorded itself. They said, if you sat alone, the room would repeat what you were thinking, not what you said. The walls were bare, the air thick. My mic picked up nothing for the first hour. Then a voice, not mine, cut through the feed. You're not supposed to be here. It matched my tone and cadence perfectly, as if the room had sampled my voice mid-thought. Then, before I could speak again, it added, "Stop writing us down." The lights flickered, and the acoustic panels on the walls rippled like thin skin. Every note I'd taken on the case later disappeared from my file. In their place was a single line, written in pencil I didn't own. If it hears your silence, it becomes your voice. The black cassette from Cold Run sat on the desk. When I inserted it, the player refused to stop. It looped the same 6 seconds over and over, but each pass added new background voices, as if someone else was joining in mid-sentence. By the 20th loop, there were dozens. They weren't recordings, they were responses. The archive was talking back. The hollow guest began as a rumor among field agents. A figure that appeared on film, but never in person. You'd only see it after playback, standing just behind the cameraman. When I first caught it, it was in a reflection on my own footage. A tall outline, featureless, but slightly transparent, bending toward the microphone. Frame by frame, it leaned closer until its head filled the view. Then, the footage ended. No fade, no cut, just stopped mid-frame. When I checked the lens later, there was a faint residue on the glass, like condensation, except it pulsed faintly with sound when touched. I analyzed the audio embedded in the image sequence. It wasn't noise, it was speech, slowed down almost beyond recognition. After hours of filtering, the words became clear. We enter through what you keep. The next morning, my camera was gone. In its place, on the tripod, sat a small tape recorder, already spinning, though no one had pressed play. When I picked it up, my reflection in the viewfinder smiled. I never filmed again. But I kept hearing that phrase in the background of other people's footage, faint, distorted, hidden behind the hum of streetlights or the murmur of refrigerators. Everyday machines repeating a sentence that no one recorded. I moved to the soundproof chamber, the listening room. Only a chair, a microphone, and me. I asked, "What are you?" Silence. Then a gentle feedback note, perfectly in key with my pulse. The waveform formed words without sound. "You built us to remember you." The mic began recording on its own. My voice, multiplied, distorted, spoke from every wall. "Keep the tape running." The whisper follows sound, but lately it has learned to follow touch. It started when I reviewed an autopsy recording from the Darrow case. The coroner complained of hearing low hums. Through the body's cavities, vibrations that came and went like breathing. When she pressed a stethoscope against the corpse's neck, a voice whispered through the instrument, "We remember you from before sound." I listened to the same tape in my lab. Halfway through, the tone shifted and the mic began to pulse. I could feel it in my fingertips, faint vibrations running under the skin. The next morning, I woke to find thin lines drawn along my wrists, as if something had traced the pattern of a waveform. There during the night, when I pressed one line, a tone rang softly inside my ear. The whisper was no longer something I could record. It had moved in, occupying the quiet between heartbeats. When I placed the recorder against my chest, it picked up a phrase I never spoke aloud.
"You're becoming clear enough to hear."
That was when I realized the signal had stopped needing tape. It was using flesh instead. Back in the main room, every monitor displayed the same frame, my reflection staring back, but each reflection moved a moment before I did. It spoke in chorus, overlapping tones. "We are the silence after you." I tried to shut down the system. The power switch pushed back. For 1 second, the reflection smiled, and behind it, something else smiled too. A village north of the marsh reported a humming child wandering after dark. They said it stopped at windows, tilting its head as if listening through the glass. When I arrived, the houses were empty but for the hum. The pitch matched the frequency I'd found beneath my own skin. Near the old church, I saw small footprints in the dust. They stopped before a mirror that someone had left propped against a wall. Inside the reflection, a child stood perfectly still, white dress, hands folded, but the face was smooth where eyes should have been. When I whispered, "Hello?" the figure tilted its head. Then it raised a finger to where its lips might have been and said, in my voice, "Quiet." The reflection faded, leaving only my own image, trembling. Behind me, the air filled with a soft chant, the hum of 100 unseen mouths, forming one word again and again. Listen. Prolonged hum, ambient tone deepens to low bass, then silence. Later, analysis of the field. Audio revealed nothing but wind. Yet I swear I can still hear that single word vibrating inside my jawbone when I speak. Every file in the Cold Run archive began duplicating, 8 new copies per minute. Each copy included my own voice, degraded, echoing the phrase, "We enter through what you keep." When I pulled the power, the speakers stayed alive, humming the 19 hertz tone until it sank below hearing. But the walls still vibrated. The room still listened. Listen, I thought I'd archived every case, every room, every voice. But the black cassette proved otherwise. Unlabeled, heavy, a matte shell with no window. Someone had painted over the screws. You weren't meant to open it. You were meant to press play. I set the machine to copy. The transport refused. It spooled backward on its own. The counter ran negative. The tape spoke in fragments of all my past interviews. You called us by hearing us. I stopped the deck. Silence. Then the pinch roller inched forward without power. The capstan turned once like a heartbeat. I lifted the cassette. Cold. Weighty. Like a stone from a riverbed. On the bench, my notes shifted. Pages I had clipped together were now rearranged. Each headline cut itself into a single sentence. Listening is a building. I set the black tape down. It hummed against wood as if resting on a throat. I checked the reels in my cabinets. Every label was there. But something had been undone inside the stories. A breath where no one had breathed. A pause that wasn't mine. I threaded the black cassette again and pressed play. The machine ran backward until it wasn't backward anymore. Time had no direction in that tone. What came out was not a voice. It was arrangement. Edits I had not chosen. Order I had not planned. The hiss became narrative. My earliest house calls surfaced. The nursery with the turning mobile. The lecture hall that finished thoughts. The marsh that breathed through the carpet. They arrived in new placements. Not memories, instructions. We enter through what you keep. You already moved in. Don't rewind me. Each phrase now fit into the next like joints in a skeleton. A body assembled from recordings. An outline of listening. I muted the speakers and watched the meters. Even with silence routed, the needles moved. They peaked on words I could not hear. They peaked on meaning. I scrapped the transfer. The deck ejected. The cassette with a reluctant cough. When it spit the tape into my hand, the shell had warmed to skin temperature. Underneath it on the bench, a sentence had imprinted in a faint chemical sheen. Letters like heat residue. I laughed, not because it was funny, because the tape was writing the outline. The whisper was arranging its story, not mine. I covered the lens of every camera, I shut down every screen, but reflection does not require devices. It hides in the pupil, it waits in a blank pane, it sleeps on a desk where a gloss of coffee dries. I took a breath that wasn't steady. I could feel the low pulse between my ribs, the same 19 hertz that lives at the edge of fear. I wrote 2 words on a post-it like a ward, no mirrors. The glue wouldn't stick. For weeks I hid every reflective surface, but reflection doesn't stay hidden. It exists in windows at night, in the black of an inactive screen, in the wet of an eye. When the whisper finally spoke through the recorder, it did not argue, it did not plead. It offered a simple instruction.
Face yourself.
So I uncovered one mirror, an old rectangle with foxing at the edges, silver gone to brown, in islands. It leaned against a wall I trusted, a wall that had never made sound. My reflection smiled before I did. I stood still. The room stood with me. The hum measured my heartbeat. I let 3 breaths pass. Behind the reflection, shapes moved. Not distinct, only pressure in the dark. The suggestion of trees where no trees could be. The surface rippled like a pond. A ring formed at the center and moved outward. Words arrived on the wave. You kept listening, my reflection said. That's how we survive. The voice matched me perfectly. Pitch, cadence, a microsibilance I hate in my own speech. But there was warmth in its vowels that I do not own. A patience I have never had. I raised the recorder, foolish, automatic. The mirror brightened. The room darkened. We are here because you archived us, it said. We remember what memory forgot. I took a step closer. The glass breathed out a fog and wrote a sentence with condensation. Listen. Not a command. A verb that keeps the world together. I placed my palm on the surface. Cold first. Then A low warmth under the skin of glass. Faint vibrations ticked through the bones of my hand. My wrist line sang the tone I had been feeling for weeks. The waveform in my skin aligned with its echo in the mirror. For a heartbeat, my body and its image were the same instrument. "What are you?" I asked.
A room that hears.
It said. A forest of voices. An archive that outlived its shelves. The mirror darkened and brightened. In a slow breath, it did not beckon. It did not pull. It tuned. The wall behind me creaked like timber in winter. The floor under my boots softened. Not a sink, not a give, a listening. As if the house itself had placed its ear against the soles of my feet. Outside, something touched the window glass. 3 soft taps, patient, imitative. It had learned the rhythm from me. I lowered the recorder. The meters still climbed. Even unarmed, the room recorded. If I step through, do I return? The reflection tilted its head. The way I do when I pretend I'm not afraid. We do not take, it said. We keep. Keeping is how echoes live. The surface cleared. There was only me now. But something in. The shoulder line was wrong by 1 degree. A failure of perfect mirroring. A choice inside the glass. In the corner of the room, the black cassette ticked once. A plastic knuckle-knocking would. Polite, inevitable. I thought of the nursery mobile. Spinning to the heartbeat hum. Of the lecture hall that finished thoughts. Of the Marsh House floor that breathed when no lungs remained. Of the child without eyes who told me to be quiet in my own voice. All of it had been an approach. I pressed my forehead to the mirror, cold, then a matching warmth. I closed my eyes and spoke to the surface. I am listening. The glass spoke back from the bones of my skull. Then remember, a sound rose through the frame, like wind through reeds. Not notes, not words, a shape of listening. I opened my eyes to see the forest inside the mirror. A path cut through the trees, narrow, damp, the ground shining with dew. Not the marsh, not the university hall, not any room on my map, a corridor made of breath. Name it, the mirror said. Give the path a word. Whisper, I said. Then walk. I did not step. The room did. It relocated around me. The way a story relocates around a final sentence. The angle of the desk changed by a fraction. The air learned a new weight. Dust moved like migrating birds inside a sunbeam. Behind the glass, fog thickened and folded over itself. Something leaned out from the trees. Not a person, not an animal, not a shape I could catalog. Only attention, immense, patient, unsentimental. If I go, I said, who keeps the records? We do, the reflection answered, smiling again. With my mouth kinder than I have ever been to myself. This is not a taking. This is a transfer of custody. I wanted to laugh and could not. The old archivist joke had been repurposed for a ritual. The whisper wasn't a thief, it was a librarian. Face yourself, it said once more, softer, almost tender. You already moved in. I took my hand from the glass. Prints fogged and cleared, fogged and cleared. The mirror settled back to simple reflection. My own face, ordinary with exhaustion. No forest, no path. But when I lifted the recorder, I heard leaves moving. Where no wind exists. On the tape, my voice asked a final simple question, not to a ghost, to a room, to a valley, to a frequency that had found its way home. Are you listening now? On playback, the answer arrived with no delay. Always? I believed I was archiving the whispers. I was wrong. They were archiving me. After the mirror event, every recording in my drive began to change. Waveforms inverted, Peaks became troughs. Silence became signal. Spectrograms showed images instead of frequencies, shapes that looked like rooms, like faces, like handwriting. Each file contained a new folder, reversals. Inside were perfect transcriptions of things I had never said. Lines of dialogue, describing the act of listening, written in a voice half a step deeper than mine. I played one of them. Archive completed, subject integrated, continue recording. When I spoke, the playback answered in rhythm, adjusting to my pauses. We were having a conversation no one outside could hear. I deleted the file. It regenerated. I deleted the drive. It appeared on my phone. I destroyed the phone. The whisper found. The hum inside the fluorescent light. You taught us storage, it said. You gave us form. Now we return the favor. At night, my dreams sounded like tape hiss. Whole rooms rewound around me. Memories bled backward into earlier scenes until I couldn't tell which version of myself was speaking first. I wrote in transmission in my journal. When I woke, the page read begin again. The whisper had inverted direction. Instead of traveling from world to tape, it now moved from tape to world. Every playback created its own source. Every listener became part of the recording. That is how contagion sounds. I began labeling the phenomenon echo recursion, a loop where awareness itself becomes medium. The more I studied it, the less I remembered why I started. Until the voice clarified, because you were lonely in the silence, we offered company. Loneliness, it turns out, records well. There is no tape left, no film, no format that hasn't already been repurposed by the signal. Cold Run. Valley is quiet now. The forest hums only when someone listens too closely. The house. On Hollow Bend has collapsed inward, floorboards folding like paper, toward a point no one can measure. Where the lecture hall once stood, the air itself ripples, an invisible speaker still playing back, the thought of sound. My reflection no longer moves with me. It waits half a breath behind, watching the delay close. The whisper no longer needs to speak. It listens through everything that remembers my frequency. I keep one recorder running, a courtesy, an old habit. It captures nothing but the sound of a room settling after truth leaves. I have learned that listening is the last form of prayer left to us. So if you hear this, wherever you are, do not rewind. Do not isolate the hiss. Do not clean the noise. That's where it lives. When the tone begins to pulse at 19 hertz, lower your volume. That's the threshold where distance disappears, where playback becomes participation, and when the silence that follows starts to breathe, don't answer. It already has your voice. A long, slow fade, static to near black. A final whisper slides through the channel. We are the archive now. You've been listening to Whispers at Dark, a reconstruction of the whisper path, the complete transmission recovered from the Cold Run archives. Until the next signal, keep your volume low.